The Rock and Roll and Coffee Show is brought to you by Retroactive, located at Broadway at the Beach in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, taking you back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s. ShopRetroactive.com. Pick up your bottle of the Rock and Roll and Coffee Show Hot Rockin' Hot Sauce now at Retroactive or rnrcoffeeshow.com.
It's the Rock and Roll and Coffee Show. Yeah, with Joe.
Well, you know what? Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Like, I believe you grew up in California, correct?
I did, yeah. My parents moved to Burbank. I don't know what year it was. I believe about 68 or so. And I went to the usual elementary school, and everything changed when I went from elementary school to junior high, which of course was a much bigger school with students from other schools. And from one of those other schools came a guy by the name of Randy Rhoads.
I've heard of that guy.
Yeah, me too. And he stood out from everybody in the school. You know, being brand new to the school, of course you're scared to death, and everybody's bigger than you, everybody's older than you, and it's scary. You know, I'm sure pretty much anybody could say the same thing. But I tell you what, you know, I just kept to myself. I didn't gravitate towards any groups or cliques like all the jocks or all the nerds or anybody like that. I just stayed by myself. And I noticed there was one other guy who did that, and it was Randy. And when I first saw him, I said, whoa, 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 look at this guy. He looked way different than everybody else. His hair was different, the way he dressed, and just the way he carried himself. And I always describe it as saying, when I saw him, I saw a glow around him.
Mm.
And I became very mesmerized by him. So I observed him for 3 days before I had the nerve to walk up to him, you know, and introduce myself. And I noticed in watching him that just like me, he just stayed away from everybody and kept to himself. So I said, I need a friend. He needs a friend, you know, and he's glowing. So I think I'll make friends with the guy that glows. So I one day went up to him and started talking with him over lunch. And from that began a really, really good and, of course, my best friendship I've ever had in my life.
Now, was Randy already playing guitar at that time?
He was, and that was really amazing to me because I had actually had some musical aspirations when I was younger, and my dad was cool enough to rent me a guitar and a small amp, and I took no lessons. I just tried to make noise is what I did. So I knew that much about it, but when I met Randy, he told me he played guitar, and I said, "Oh, that's cool. I've tried to play guitar," and he went on to explain his mother's school and all that. He's been playing since he was 7. And told me all that, and I was like, "Oh, that's impressive." And then he invited me over to his house after school that day, and I said, "Sure," you know. So I went over there, and one of the first things he did was whip out his guitar and started playing. He didn't know how to play lead yet. He hadn't learned lead, but he was playing a bunch of chords, and he was playing some songs, and that sure as hell was a lot better than I had ever done.
Did you ask him to show you how to play guitar better?
I didn't. And it was very divine timing, which ties into something I'd like to talk about a little later, which is in Australia. But he had a guitar teacher at the time, which was why he was so good. And he began to learn his leads. I mean, it didn't take like more than a week of me just listening to him, because that's all he did. He just You went over to his house and he played guitar for you at first. Then we started getting into other kid things.
Mhm.
But um, he was just starting to learn lead. And he suggested to me, knowing, that I had played something, he said, "Hey, why don't you become a bass player?" And I was like, "Bass? What's that all about?" And he explained it to me. And there was an old guitar there, a Gibson Army Navy Special that was like the house guitar. And so we grabbed that, and he said, "Just play the four biggest strings, and I'll show you what to do." And so I was doing that. And uh, and it was working for us. It was working out pretty good. And so then we were like, well, now we need a real bass. And how can we get one? And I went to my dad, and he said, "No, no, I already did all that with you." And which is okay. That's cool, you know. But his older brother, Kelly, had a band, and the bass player there was getting a brand new bass, and the bass he was currently playing wasn't so great. And once he got his new bass, he put that old bass in a corner. Me and Randy eyeballed it for a few days. It's to us by that time, that's just going to collect dust. He's so in love with his new bass, so we stole it.
You stole his bass.
And yeah, and now I was a bass player.
Just like that. So were you guys,
Yeah.
did you start out trying to write songs, or I mean, what did you guys do once you had the bass?
No, we actually started out learning something that probably every musician has learned the hard way and in the very, very beginning. But we only had one amp, and that was Randy's amp, which was a little Gretsch amp, and not really famous for making amps. But it did have two inputs, and it had like an 8 or a 10-inch speaker. It wasn't very loud, but it was enough. And so I played bass through it, and he played guitar through it. And in the music world, that is a huge no-no because you will blow up your amp, and that's promptly what we did. And then we
Uh,
had to do a few extra chores to get the money to fix the amp. And then so that didn't happen again. I did talk my dad into renting me an amp. So then we were all set up and ready to learn. And when he went to his lesson, his guitar lesson with Scott Shelly,
mhm.
he'd come home and teach me everything that he had learned. And he'd teach me how to play bass over it. And he'd learn how to play his new leads over it. And that was how it started. It was definitely from the birth of him becoming who he became.
Yeah, yeah. So at what point did you guys say, you know what, we need to find a drummer and a singer?
Well, that didn't take too long because, I mean, we progressed at a phenomenal rate, so much so that it actually got us in trouble in that we were of the belief that it was far more important for us to skip school than and learn nothing that we want to know than it is to stay home and practice and jam. So we stopped going to school,
Of course.
and things like that went on for quite a while. Actually, the school let us get away with it quite a while because, frankly, um, you know, a point came at some point where we were causing problems, and that was a year later after we saw Alice Cooper, and were totally inspired by Alice Cooper and what they looked like and what they were all about. That we kind of began dressing that way to school, and back then you just didn't do that. So the school was more of the attitude like, well, I'm glad those guys aren't around because now we don't have to, prevent any potential riot based on pantsing a couple of, little kids.
So is that when you guys went on and what was the name of the band? Mildred Pierce? Was that the name of your first band?
No, oh, Mildred Pierce.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah,
Okay. So that was your first band that you guys put together?
right. We met another guy in school. He wasn't really quite like us as far as our dedication to really standing out and being the kind of musicians we dreamed of being someday. He was sort of a square, but he did play guitar and he did sing. And then we recruited the guy in the school who was known as the best drummer, and there was our band. We had a band, and that was probably didn't happen until we were about 13 years old.
Okay. And then so that band, what happened with that band? Did you guys get out and start playing? I mean, I know that's young, but
Yeah, that band was a springboard. It didn't last very long, but the first thing we thought when it was over was we need to put another band together. And believe it or not, by this time, at like 13 years old, we were actually pretty accomplished to where, and we had done enough jamming with older guys because we did jam with a lot of people who had like 10 years on us. We were constantly going around jamming with people. Burbank was just like that. If you wanted a jam, it was easy to find. So we went to a lot of that, and so we weren't intimidated by older guys, players at all. So that's what we did. We found some older guys, and we put together another band called the Captain Jammer Kids. Um, that was fun. It was great, and for the time, it was wonderfully different. But it ended, of course,
uh-huh. Now,
and
at this point, it was your goal to be a rock star. Was that the
yeah,
goal for both you guys?
that's
Okay.
and that's what my book's all about. My book's
Mhm.
all about two kids who grow up dreaming on being rock stars, and it's 1972. So it's from that era when they really, really made rock stars. Not a word against anybody out there currently, because I think there's a lot of talent out there right now, and they're all young.
So when was it that you guys eventually started forming the first incarnation of Quiet Riot?
That happened after me and Randy were in a couple other bands, and we had tasted the Sunset Strip. We played our first time we played on the Sunset Strip. We played at a club that, long story short, used to be a massage parlor, but had to temporarily become a rock and roll club to keep the police happy. So we played there, and then we ended up with this guy named Smokey, and we were in a band called Smokey, and we played at the very, very, very infamous club, Rodney Bingenheimer's, which only probably you could count on one hand the amount of bands that played there. But the place is absolutely legendary for just unbelievably uh, 1970s debauchery. It
Mm-hmm.
was ridiculous. And if you don't believe me, you can ask anybody in Led Zeppelin or the Sweet or T Rex or Boy or Iggy. The list goes on.
So, okay, so then you're playing out, you're doing all this stuff. Um, and then you get Kevin in a band, or who came
We do,
next?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
One night after our band had broke up, that didn't mean that we didn't hang out at Rodney Bingenheimer's club anymore. We still hung out there. And we knew this girl really well, and it was quite late because they do a lot of after hours stuff. And um, so we decided to spend the night at her house. And the next morning, when I woke up before Randy, we were just crashed out in a little bed, together. Um, when I woke up, I heard the girl talking. She was awake, and she was talking to somebody in the kitchen on the phone about a guy who was a singer. And I went, whoa, hey, wait, we need a singer. So I got right up and I went in there and I said, what's this about a singer? And she said, oh, this girl last night, she went to this show and she met this guy and he says he's a singer. And I'm like, get his phone number. And so she got it and gave it to me. And that was how we found Kevin.
So you called him up and just said, "Hey, we need a singer."
Yeah, I called him up and I said, hey, we want to meet you and see what you're all about, see if you're a good fit. He wasn't, but he got in the band anyway.
That's funny. That's funny. So you and Kevin didn't get along, right? Randy,
No,
I don't think Randy even thought he was a good fit, right?
We really didn't think, well, let me put it this way. We had something different in mind. We
Mm.
wanted to be the next Alice Cooper, David Bowie. We wanted to be, out there weird.
Hmm.
Instead, we got Kevin, who, okay, had a look, but it wasn't what we envisioned. We wanted like Rob Zombie or, you know, uh, Marilyn Manson or something, give me something freaky.
Something way, way
Um,
out there
yeah,
for
something
that
way
time.
out there
Hmm.
that attracted attention. That's what we noticed about Alice Cooper, and that's what we learned is that he attracted attention by being different. So we said we're going to be different.
That's funny. So why did you settle? Why did you settle on Kevin? Not continue the search?
Well, pretty much, if you wanted to throw him out, you had to fight him.
He didn't want to
And
go.
oh, and he was like, I don't know, he was like a disease, like eczema or something. You can't get rid of it.
Oh man.
It's just there. It's always there. He just refused. He had kind of finagled his way into the band over my objections, going through Randy, who is much more forgiving than myself. And so we were stuck with him. And he did make a lot of things happen. He said he could get as a manager. Boom, he did get as a manager. Now we had a real place to rehearse where the cops didn't show up because that was always a problem.
Mm.
And the guy that managed us was really, really cool, and me and Randy at least adored him. We all did actually, until Kevin and the drummer Drew decided that he wasn't doing such a great job as a manager, and Kevin had heard of some other managers who may be interested in us, and we ended up going with them.
Mm.
And parting with him was bad for me and Randy, but for the other guys, it was just fine with them. So we get with this new management, and they got an office in Beverly Hills. They got floor to ceiling windows that overlook all of Beverly Hills and Hollywood. It's amazing. And you're a little kid. I was
Right.
about 16 years old when I walked into that.
Wow.
Quiet Riot was formed when I was 15.
Mm.
So I'm about 16 years old, and all of a sudden I'm on the top floor of the CAA building, which is where all the agencies and managers are. And I'm in this guy's office with this kind of a view, and I'm thinking, okay, this is real. This is the real shit here. This is, now we're getting somewhere.
Right.
And Kevin did make it happen. So you had to give him that. But I still hated him, and I still thought he sucked.
You thought he sucked, really? What
Yeah,
was his
I
voice like?
totally did.
What was his voice like back then? Because I think he's one of the most underrated singers in rock.
I couldn't agree more. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. But back then, he was just learning how to sing.
Hmm.
The first time we heard him, we said, one small problem here. You don't know how to sing. And we knew his favorite singer was Paul Rogers and Steve Marriott and all that. And so we said, okay, me and Randy was such a good teacher on guitar that it carried over into teaching a guy how to sing. He could
Mm.
do it. So with some vocal coaching, not with us singing anything, because we can't. They make me sing because I'm
Right.
the bass player. I think it's a big mistake. And we learned Randy sure couldn't even sing a note. So while he did pretend to sing on stage, his mic was turned down.
Yeah. Yeah.
He
I'm the
was
same way.
that bad.
I'm the same way. Turn my
Yeah,
mic down.
yeah. I don't even know what I am, but
That's funny.
I just do my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this band, this new management had all these ideas for this new band they got. They're seeing the Bay City Rollers being successful, and they're like, "You guys, you're going to be the next Bay City Rollers." And so they went with a variation of those guys.
Hmm.
And that's as far removed from being in Alice Cooper as it is being in the Osmonds,
Right.
to us.
Right.
And so we were like, well, maybe these guys know what they're thinking about. They sure have a nice office. Look at all that, you know.
Right.
And they're taking us out and wining and dining us, you know, all that kind of stuff. Eventually got us a beautiful, amazing rehearsal space. If people would have seen this place, I've never seen some great pictures of where we rehearsed, but it was amazing. It was a Columbia movie lot, and we had half of a whole sound stage. And you don't realize how big a sound stage until you've been in one. They are huge. You know, I mean, that's where they set up waterfalls and houses and all kinds of stuff. We had half. So that was, you know, we were so mesmerized to, um, by all this that we just went along with it. And we went with a look that, you know, I accepted because I was in the band, but it just wasn't my thing and not
Wasn't
my
what you
dream.
wanted. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So at this point, did you guys have original songs?
Oh yeah, yeah. Back then if you were in a cover band, I mean nobody even knew who you were. Like other musicians, like real musicians, you know, they didn't know who you were. You didn't do tunes, although we did, but they were like 1,000 years old, so you can get away with it. But no, I mean we're playing with bands like Wolfgang, who eventually became Autograph, and we're playing with Sister, that eventually became Wasp, and you know, no band that was on the uh, '70s club circuit in Hollywood played covers
Right. Right.
except one,
Except one.
because there was one club that liked covers.
Who?
It was
Who?
down the street, and I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Gazzarri's.
With Van Halen? They
Mm-hmm.
do covers? Yeah.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
their job, you know. And hey, that's cool, you know. Nobody begrudged the cover bands. It was cool with us, you know. Hey, you're a player, you know. You're making money. Good for you. We're not.
So let me ask you this. So in rehearsals, if you're playing original songs and you're writing songs and you
Yeah.
guys don't like your singer, how was that dynamic in rehearsals when it came to writing?
Well, I had very little part in the writing myself. It was mostly handled by Kevin and uh, Randy, and Kevin, because of this was the atmosphere of Quiet Riot. Kevin wasn't exactly keen to me being too much in on the writing. However, when we played the song, you know, for the first two, three times, four times, whatever, you know, we were allowed to say, you know, how about if we did this there, you know, and if everybody agreed, then we did it, and if it worked, we kept it. So you wrote about that much.
So then you guys from what I remember, Quiet Riot took a long time. Like you guys didn't you were one of the front runners in the scene at the time, right? But you were one of
Right.
the later ones to get actual deals.
Oh
A bit
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, oh that's a whole different story, a whole nother show, you know, why we didn't have a deal,
Yeah.
which we eventually got with Japan, which was nice, and you could actually hold your record. The only thing you couldn't do with it, you could play it, but the one thing you couldn't do with it was go to a record store here and buy it. You had to go to Japan or Malaysia or Korea. I don't know where you had to go, but it was released in Southeast Asia. So probably they even sold our records in Vietnam.
That's strange. Now, didn't go over there at that time and play, right? Or did you?
Nope, we never made it there. Um,
That's odd. Just
it,
sell the record there.
they told us every week we were going next week, and next week came and then it never happened. And that same week they'd say, "Well, you're going next week." It went on and on and on. It was very frustrating.
Did they
You
ever
could
tell
get the
you
bag packed.
did they ever tell you why that was the plan for the records?
Well, they it's a sort of another long story, but we owed a lot of money to a recording studio, so we had to sign with somebody who would give us some money. And the Japanese did, and that paid off the recording studio because we had the albums done.
Right, right. So you had them done, and that was who would sign you as a label overseas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to pay off our marker with the recording studio.
Oh, geez. So here you are with 2 records.
Yeah.
Can't get anything done in the U.S. Now,
No.
meanwhile, Van Halen was surpassing you guys, right, and moving on and everything
Yeah,
else.
I mean, during their, I mean, they played mostly covers at Kazari's, but they did throw in some of their originals here and there. So they were getting, really positive feedback on, hey, your originals kick ass, So, and I think Van Halen is a great band. I mean, I'm a big fan of Van Halen, David Lee Roth era. And I wish I would have had David Lee Roth in my band.
Well, he's not Alice Cooper either.
He'll do. He's at least Jim Dandy, who was also on the same bill with Alice Cooper when me and Randy saw him for the first time, and we were just as impressed with Jim Dandy as we were with Alice Cooper. We thought Black Oak, Arkansas were amazing, and we based a lot of our looks on what they wore.
You guys probably would have been better off with Blackie if you were looking for that Alice Cooper type guy.
Oh, for sure. And me and Randy were actually really, really good friends with Blackie because we'd all show up at sound check at 4 o'clock, and me, Blackie, and Randy would hang out at the bar and have drinks while we were waiting for drum sound, all this. And um, so, yeah, we were really good friends, but it
You
was
never
kind of
talked
like,
about it?
no, it was
No.
sort of like a unspoken rule, It's like you had your band and you were totally dedicated to it. You didn't think outside the box of that band. So it just never was even a thought. We liked Blackie. We liked what he did. We thought that, the whole thing was very over the top. I mean, this guy has a can of worms that says live bait on it, and he eats live worms on stage and then spits it all over the audience. We can
That's
get
what you
into
want.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see that. I want that in my band.
Right.
But there was just sort of an unspoken rule where you didn't try to be kissing cousins.
Right. Did all the bands get along at that time?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. No rivalry or oh, I hate those guys. Oh, we have to play with them. There was zero, completely different than these days.
Yeah. How about between Eddie and Randy? Because you hear stories that there was some tension there and they didn't quite get along. How was their relationship?
Well, I mean, it would take 2 people to get along, and that just wasn't in Randy. Of course, famously, it's in Eddie, and not the bad rap Eddie. I love Eddie. I think he's great, but he was a different kind of a guy than Randy. Randy was a perfect angel. Randy didn't hate anybody. Randy wasn't jealous of anybody. He couldn't be. That's how he was wired. He couldn't be jealous of another player. He would just say, well, I'll be that good next week. He could do that. And so we played with them once, but we didn't even watch them. There's even a video out there is while Van Halen is playing up on the stage, we were down in the basement in the drama room, department room for the school because it was at a college, and we were putting on dresses and hamming for a camera. And Van Halen's playing upstairs, but we're not watching them. We don't care.
When do you think Randy started separating himself as a guitar player? Like, when did he start getting noticed as that guy can play?
Well, it certainly happened in Hollywood because, whenever we played at anywhere, but we were primarily at the Starwood, his side of the stage was way packed with girls. And way more than I had on my side of the stage. And then kind of in the middle where Kevin was, there wasn't really too many people. Um, so, uh, so yeah, I mean, it was obvious from the beginning that he had a charisma that attracted people like crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the glow that I saw originally. Now it was coming to fruition through his guitar, which I had always known him to be, completely into.
Mm-hmm.
His guitar was his girlfriend. It was everything to him. So, um, but I think what happened is when he got in Ozzy, that changed his thinking, which really needed to happen. That needed to happen badly. And he was given a forum where he could be more of the darker kind of classical stuff that we like, that was much more along the veins of Alice Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, he changed his style to adapt to that new band. I think
Mm-hmm.
Bob Daisley had a lot to do with it too. Bob
Mm-hmm.
Daisley had a lot to do with telling him, look, this is where you got to go with your thinking.
Right.
And but Randy also had a lot of free time with that because there were situations and things, and you're not playing 24 hours a day and nobody's going anywhere, so you sit in your room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like being on tour.
Yeah.
So I think that's when he really got into the classical thing. And I think that once he introduced the classical into the way he was playing rock, that's when his style completely changed. And I
Mm.
think that's why it completely changed.
I
And
see.
that's why it's night and day from what he did with me and Quiet Riot and what he did with Ozzy.
Right.
Two different people, really.
Right. Now, I will say, though, listening to the first two Quiet Riot records that you were on, his guitar sound is pretty much spot on of what he had in Ozzy. Did he use the same gear?
He used the same technique, which when he did it at first in the recording studio, the guys that were recording us, the engineers and all that, and then we had some drunk producer and all this who was never there anyway. But uh, Randy did a thing that most guitar players couldn't do, and that was he triple tracked.
Hmm.
He could play his lead, and he could play it exactly the same every single time. And these were complicated leads, even on those old albums.
Sure.
Anyone can see, how far this guy progressed, from meeting me and just starting his leads, and then, 7 years later, he's like still playing this phenomenal stuff.
Hmm.
So, um, and I didn't think much of it because I thought everybody got better that fast. But no, I always say about Randy, he didn't get better every year, every month. He got better every 60 seconds.
Hmm.
So, but he wanted to do this triple tracking, an idea he had. And he learned along the way of the triple tracking that if sometimes in playing that solo, there was a little nuance in a lead, maybe he bent the string a little bit more than he originally had. And when you triple tracked all that stuff, it created this amazing sound. And I've not heard any talk out there about people saying that.
Mm-hmm.
People have commented that he was a triple tracker, I guess
Mm-hmm.
is the best way to call
Triple
him.
tracker. Yeah.
Yeah. But he could do it flawlessly. And everybody was, the engineers and the recording people were like, oh my God, I've never seen anybody do that. So that's why it sounds so amazing, because he could do that.
And he would do that on all the guitar tracks or just the
He did
leads?
that on every single guitar track he ever played.
Wow. Wow. And then how about the gear? Was he just pretty much a straight into the amp kind of guy, or was there pedals?
Oh no, he loved effects. And that romance began with me and him way, way back when we first started, because, you want to buy new toys when you're that beginning of a musician,
Sure.
because the thinking is, oh, this will make me sound better.
Right. Right.
So, so, but in his case, it damn sure did make him sound better. I mean, like it was instantaneous. Plug this thing in,
Mm,
boom. Now
yeah.
he was light years from where he was a minute ago.
So let's go back a little bit. So with Quiet Riot, and you're not liking Kevin. Now, everyone's heard the story about you shooting the gun in the ceiling and, all that kind of
Thank
stuff.
you.
Yeah, everyone's heard that story. If they
Yeah,
haven't, they can
thanks
go.
for saying that. Yeah, yeah. Even I've heard it a few times.
Yeah, I'm sure you've had to tell it a few times. So I'm not going to make you
Yeah.
go through all that again. But I do want to know. So when that happened, and then your next step was going to see Kevin while he was recording in the studio, from what I hear, right?
Yeah, that was the
What,
thinking
what were
is
you
I
going to
thought I'd
do
go.
if you made it there?
Well, I mean, and I don't know you personally to know if you've ever been so drunk that you don't even know what you're doing. I mean, you are blacked out, dude. You are out
Right.
of here, gone, zombie. The best thing I got out of that whole incident was the fact that I did rob a bar that was on fire to get all the liquor that was
And
consumed.
that is funny, I will say. I did know you did that. And
I think
so
I
this
get
bar's
a little bit
burning
of.
and you're like, you know what? I'm taking the liquor.
Well, the way I see it is, you see, I'm a hero because that alcohol stuff is very flammable.
Right.
And luckily, I had two girls with me that could stuff bottles in all kinds of places, and nobody even noticed me walk out. So, that's part of the night.
Yeah.
And, I mean, everything was fun. The next day, when Randy came over to help me uh, drink all this stuff I had, we were having a great time. And then the subject of Kevin came up, and
Yeah.
and dark clouds were in the sky at that point.
So you were headed to Kevin as he was recording in the studio, right? That's where you were going?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
So the best thing that could
Because
have happened to you that night, though, was probably getting pulled over by those police.
oh, for sure,
Yeah.
I ought to be thanking them.
Yeah. Yeah.
All these years later, because I really don't know what I would have done.
Right.
I know what I have in me to actually do to people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, I live in Las Vegas ish, and I carry a gun quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if I need to use it, you know,
Right.
I'm not going to hesitate.
Right.
So, uh, yeah, that was my big plan. But an interesting part of this happened many, many years later, after me and Kevin became such great friends, just like brothers. And what happened was we talked about that night. And I said, "Do you remember me calling you?" Because my recollection was that I had called down to the record plant to make sure he was there. That's where he was recording. And I asked for Kevin Dubrow, and some guy got on the phone, and I said, "Kevin Dubrow, I'm coming down there, and I'm going to kill you." And I hung up. And then after that, the ensuing arrest and all that.
Right.
So my dog is letting me know somebody. You're probably my wife. Um, but anyways, we talked about that years later, and he said, "I never got that phone call." And I go, "You didn't?" And he goes, "No, you didn't call me." I'm like, "Wow, man, I wonder who the hell I talked to." I mean, did they put like Rod Stewart or somebody,
Maybe you
on
were
the
ordering
phone?
pizza or something.
Yeah, yeah, that could have happened too. Yeah, no, I was that blitzed. You're absolutely right. I never thought of it that way, but yeah, maybe I didn't even call. Now that
Right.
I heard Kevin say that, maybe I didn't even call the record plant.
Right.
Maybe I called the plant store. But anyways, but yeah, getting busted on that was probably the best thing to happen to me. Unfortunately, it was the announcement of my demise because it designated to the powers above me that now I was too reckless, and the guy's getting thrown in jail. and he's dangerous. He's got guns. He's playing with guns. He drinks like crazy. Time for him to go.
Did the guys
And
did the guys tell you that you were no longer in the band, or did management? Who broke the
management
news?
told me, but I
Okay.
already knew.
Yeah.
I already knew because the day when I got out of jail, the first thing I did was I called Randy
Mm.
and I said, "Hey, man." And he's like, "Oh my God, that was so fucked up last night." And I go, "Yeah, well, it gets worse." I go, "I spent the night in jail." And and he goes, "Why?" And I said, I don't know, I was going to go look for Kevin or something, and I couldn't drive. So they threw me in jail. I got a DUI now. And so we were laughing about the whole thing, you know. I mean, for me and him, who had been in many fights over the years, and I'm talking rolling around in the grass,
Mm.
trying to punch each other, but also not wanting to hurt the other guy, but
Right.
still wrestling about and ending up crying, red faced, and all that. Um, so we thought it was something that occurred between me and him, but Kevin and company found out and took it to the management,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when they made their
Yeah.
decision, which I took like a man, and I was actually relieved
I was going to ask you, how did
because
that make you feel? Were you were relieved?
I was very depressed about it for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
not that long, but I will say 3 days after I was out of the band, I cut off all my hair and I enrolled in an EMT school to get certified to work on an ambulance.
So
And
how come you didn't go keep staying with music, or were you just like
I
that
don't want any,
incident?
I didn't want anything to do with music.
Yeah.
I still kind of don't, but I'm always out there playing.
Right. Right. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So do you feel if it wasn't for your relationship with Randy, you would have never got into music?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm,
100%, 1000%.
yeah. Interesting. All right. So you're out of Quiet Riot now. Randy's still in there with Kevin, which he doesn't really care for too much at the time.
No.
How soon after that did he leave for Ozzy?
I believe it was 3 or 4 months.
Okay, so not long.
Yeah, and Kevin said to me over lunch one day, because we used to have lunch once a week. He was sitting there and he said something to me that I found to be the most unbelievable thing I ever heard come out of Kevin. And he looked at me and he said, after you left the band, it just wasn't the same for Randy anymore. His heart
Hmm.
just wasn't in it. And I was like,
Yeah, you were his best
wow,
friend.
that
Yeah.
came out of you?
Hmm. So when Randy, well, let me get back up a little bit. But when you left Quiet Riot and they were looking for bass player, did Nikki Sixx audition or want to
Yes, he
audition?
did.
He
Yeah.
did, but he didn't get the job. Kevin didn't like him.
Um,
Something,
he couldn't play.
couldn't play.
And that's a very famous story.
Yeah,
Yeah, he couldn't play.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, well, they told me, um, they told him, what I heard from Kevin was they told Nikki, this song's in the key of F, and Randy's going to teach it to him. He's standing right there. And Nikki said, "Where's F?" And Randy kind of just looked at Kevin and went,
He's
not
not going to do
going to
this.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know what song they were going to teach him to play because we only had one song in the key of F,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very, very bass song, and that was Killer Girls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I mean, I got to say, growing up as a bass player, Nikki was one of my guys when I was young. He was like,
Yeah.
it was probably more of the show and the rock star part of it, But
Yeah.
anyway, he was one of my guys. But you hear nowadays that, oh, Nikki's not playing his bass and all this kind of stuff. But do you believe that stuff, or do you believe he is a decent bass
These
player
days,
now?
I don't know anymore. I mean, and trust me, I am a huge Motley Crue fan. Huge, gigantic. Not so much anymore because I like Mick Mars, and I thought he was a very unique guitar player, right up there with people like Ronson and stuff. Um, but yeah, I'm a big Motley Crue fan, and they were a rock band. If only we would have had Vince Neil for a singer. I can go
You
on and on.
you wanted everybody but Kevin.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
funny. That's
So,
funny.
um, but yeah, I find it hard to. Here's my take on the
Hmm.
whole thing. Supposedly Nikki writes all of the Motley Crue songs.
Hmm.
Okay, anybody that can write songs that good, and they are good, has to know where F is.
Well, I'm sure he does now.
So,
Maybe not back
as
then.
far as, huh?
Maybe not back then. I'm sure he does now.
No, but he learned,
Yeah,
and
he
I'm
sure
here
did.
to testify that you know what, you can learn pretty quick because I was a pretty good bass player. By the time I was 13, I was keeping up with Randy Rhoads. Try
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
right?
Okay. So Randy's into Ozzy. He gets an Ozzy. Did he ever talk to you about maybe coming in Ozzy, or was that the musical part between you two? Was that done at that point?
Oh, we were still friends. We talked now and then. Once I did graduate from EMT school, I went right to work on an ambulance the day after.
Hmm.
I worked 48-hour shifts. I worked two of them a week. I wasn't around very much.
Hmm.
And that was before I did overtime and sometimes worked 3 days in a row. Um, so I wasn't around. They were always rehearsing. Quiet Riot was one of the most rehearsed bands you could ever imagine. Um, and that was a good thing. You could go on stage completely bombed, as I often did, and you still knew the songs and played them
Right.
perfect.
Right.
Um, so, uh, so yeah, we talked now and then. How you doing? One time we were back in my ambulance into my station, and Randy pulled up and had to stop because we had our lights on because we were backing in. And I saw him and I waved to him. I saw his guitar in the car, and I knew, well, he's off to rehearsal. That's about what time you go right about now.
How long were you in doing the EMT stuff?
I did it 10 years.
10 years. Okay.
I did it
And
9 years. 9 years in L.A. and 1 year in Vegas.
okay, so 9 years in LA. So that means you saw Quiet Riot when they finally broke out. You were in the
Oh
same
yeah,
town. So
oh
how did
yeah.
that make you feel when that happened? When they finally got the shot?
Well, naturally there were pangs of jealousy,
Hmm.
and there was also some elaborate plans made by myself, dreams more than anything, of how to kill Kevin on stage, which included
Still going
something
after
like
Kevin.
a crossbow or something I could sneak in and nail the guy.
Yeah.
These were just fantasies, um, and which I regret ever having. I truly do. Um, but yeah, of course I was jealous. But I also didn't see it as the same band, because I said, well, there's no Randy, there's no me, there's no Drew. This is a whole different deal. And plus, I knew the reasoning on why that band was even called Quiet Riot, because Randy had made it big. Everybody's going, where'd this kid come from? And they're going, oh, he was in this band that didn't make it in Hollywood called Quiet Riot. So now everybody's talking about Quiet Riot. And Kevin very wisely said, I think I'm going to use that name because I can. And he did. And what he did with it, I think is just great. It's still around. It's that great.
Well, I mean, that's got to make you feel good that you were part of the history of a band like Quiet Riot.
Not only that, but 2 years ago, um, I played with the current band live uh, on Fremont Street in Las Vegas on New Year's Eve. I
Did
went
you?
up and I did one song,
With
and that was my first time in Quiet Riot in 45 years.
wow, I did not know that. Was Jizzy? Jizzy was singing 2 years ago, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And Rudy was playing bass, and Rudy just put his bass on me, and off we went, and we did Slick Black Cadillac, which incidentally is about my dad. I don't get any songwriting credits on it, but it is about my dad.
Yeah. How many? I know that song was on the one of the earlier albums. How many of the songs that when you were in the band made it onto like Mental Health and all those?
None.
None. They were all new songs. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Right. That's awesome. I didn't know you had the chance to do that. That had to feel really good for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like I came full circle, and
Mm-hmm.
now those guys in Quiet Riot, and I'm good friends with all of them. Um, you know, if they introduce me to somebody or if they refer to me, it's always Kelly Garni is OG Quiet Riot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You should get a shirt that says that. OG Quiet Riot.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so okay, so now let's fast forward though. Your relationship with Kevin, when did you guys mend? When did you like I'm sure you didn't see him for a long time when Quiet Riot was in their heyday. When did you finally see each other again and then let bygones be bygones?
What happened was a mutual friend of both Kevin's and mine called me up one day. This was it was in the '80s when they were in their big heyday. Um, he called me up and he said, "Listen," and this is after Randy had passed away. He said, it's not good that you and Kevin don't talk, and that there's always this problem that still exists between you two. And I want to put you two in a hotel room together, and I want you guys to work it out. And this particular friend was the kind of guy that if he said something that heavy to you, you actually listened to it,
Mm-hmm.
and you said, you know, there was no hesitation in thinking and saying, well, if you say so, okay. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
happened. And the second me and Kevin saw each other, we gave each other a big hug and we wouldn't let go.
That's awesome. So how
Then
long
he eventually moved to Vegas, about a year later, if even, and lived about a mile away from me. And I would take care of his house when he was on tour and feed his cats and get the mail and all that sort of stuff.
mm-hmm.
And then when he was home, then we would hang out. We'd go to dinner. We'd go to lunch. He even had a little home recording studio, and he'd call me up and say, "Hey, will you come over and do some bass for me?" And I'd say, "Yeah," because he'd be writing songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, I mean, we were friends to that level, even where I'm
Yeah,
playing with the
that's so
guy.
great. Are those
Yeah.
tapes still around? What you guys recorded?
Unfortunately, what happened was, and I really wanted to get a hold of Kevin's computer after he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only thing I wanted. And because I knew what was on there.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I went over to his house, he would play me things off the computer. When we were recording, we're off the computer. Everything's computer, and one time he even like clicked on something. He goes, "Hey, look at this." And I look, and it's some dog, doing a girl. And
Oh,
I'm
geez.
going, okay, I don't need to see that. He just liked to shock people. Uh, so, um, but yeah, so everything was on his computer. So I knew what was on it. No one else would know. But there was a kerfluffle that happened after he passed away, between me, his family, and Frankie Benelli, which Frankie and I got over it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
But and so did Kevin's family too. But um, what happened to his computer, I don't know.
Yeah, that's too bad. That's too bad. So
Yeah,
how long did you guys get to enjoy that friendship again before Kevin passed?
that's a good question. I've never really thought about it. I don't even think about how old I am. So if I had to guess, I'd say a good 3 years.
So now you're still in Vegas. In 2013, you wrote your book.
Yeah.
Why did you feel the need that you had to write a book?
Well, I always knew I'd have to. I always knew that was in the plan for me. That you're going to have to write a book. Now that Randy got to this level, they're going to want to hear from you because I had already done a ton of magazine interviews and all that. And, and these were not so gentle hints that I needed to write a book. In fact, my thinking at the time was maybe if I write a book and everybody can read about it, they'll stop asking me and bothering me. That was actually my thinking. And so I said, but that'll be someday. I sit down and, and I mean, it's a big decision to write a book. It's
Sure.
like getting married for, in that book's case, 2 years.
Right.
So some guys came along, made me a really good offer, of course, which didn't come through because this is the music business. And I ended up self-publishing it, which was a really smart thing for me to do
Mm-hmm.
because that book is done extremely, extremely well.
Yeah.
And I get good reviews on it. I get emails from people saying, "Oh my God, I've read it 3 times," which
Yeah. I
three
got to get it.
times
I gotta read it. I want to read it. There's two versions, right? You did a second pressing.
in a way.
Okay.
Here's what happened when these guys screwed me over that were going to give me all this money and do all this stuff to make this book even better than what it was and is currently, and broke all their promises. And we had pre-sold a bunch of books. We had pre-sold almost 200 books. Um, I never saw that money. But I felt a big commitment towards these people. Hey, here's my name on a book, and you guys bought it, so you're going to get a book. So these guys totally fell through on me, and I said, look, I have a contract with you. Unless you give me 200 books, I'm going to get a lawyer, and I am going to sue the shit out of you. And 200 books arrived at my house one day, pretty quick, after a lot of excuses. But they finally showed up and significantly more threats. But it finally happened. I got my books, two big boxes of books, UPS brought. And I go out, I'm on my porch, and I'm like, oh my God, my book. I wrote a book. It's unbelievable. I wrote a book. Ask any writer, their first book is like their first orgasm.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
this is monumental, you know, thing in your life.
Right.
So I open up the boxes, I pull out a book, and I open it up to see what the pages look like, and all the pages fall out from the binder and on the floor.
Oh no.
I'm in shock. And so I said, they all couldn't be like that. I take out another book. Same thing. Same
Oh,
thing. Same thing. Same thing. And of course, my first thought is, there is no way I am sending this book to anybody.
right. You can't sell that.
Yeah. So they did deliver 200 books to me. So that they fell apart, was blame that could be put on anybody by a judge.
Sure.
And that's what a
Sure.
lawyer told me. And so I didn't end up suing them. Now it was all on me.
Mm-hmm.
So we very hurriedly, and with the help of some good friends, Tammy Ford, John Parks, we were able to put together a self-published book on Amazon and get it out in a timely manner that, satisfied all the pre-ordered books.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first experience with having a book out there. Having it out there since has been great, but
Yeah.
it sure didn't make people stop asking me questions because
Yeah.
nice to meet you, Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're gonna have that. You're gonna. I mean, with
Yeah, I
history, you're gonna.
realized that after some years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So was writing that book, was that difficult for you or emotional, or there had to be all kinds of emotions thinking back on those
Uh,
stories.
that's a good question. Yeah, there were all kinds of emotions, of course. And of course, the two hardest parts for me were writing about Randy passing away and Kevin. Kevin was actually more difficult. This was something that happened basically in my backyard. And yeah, those kind of parts were hard. Uh, Other than that, people ask me, "Oh, was it cathartic for you to write your life story?" I say, "No, it really wasn't." I
Mm-hmm.
just sat down and wrote what happened.
Right.
And some would say, and I could name names, but they, I won't. They would say, "Well, that's the way you remember it." And you know what? That could be said about any biography by any.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
It's how it's that
So
was your experience of it. Yeah, how you remember it.
yeah. And
So
anybody that knows me really, really well will tell you I have a very, very good memory for an old part.
okay. But you not only wrote that book, you also had another book just a couple years ago, Naked Vegas, right?
Yeah,
Tell me about that book because that I was reading about that book as well, and it said that you, what did it say? Something about it's a book about you making a career hanging out with naked women. Is that correct? And then you went into the
it's really,
becoming,
really close.
yeah.
It's making a living off of naked women.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and I'm not a pimp. Uh, no, I became a photographer and I went pro with it and started off shooting models and actors and all that sort of thing. I worked with a lot of Vegas shows. I photographed lions, tigers, elephants, lots of famous people on the Las Vegas Strip, tons of them. Um, you know, it just uh, I had a lot of experience, and my business did very, very, very well. And but one day they invented this thing called the internet, and it wasn't too long before the uh, escorts in Las Vegas, whose numbers range into the thousands and thousands. Once the escorts started working on the internet, they needed pictures, and that's where I came in. And I ended up doing the top girl in town, the most expensive woman in Las Vegas you could buy. And once I did her pictures, all the other ones came to me. And pretty soon, my once fairly PG rated business was X, you know, and so and it encompassed probably about 75% of my business. Yeah, so it was a lot. And during all that, I discovered I actually had an artistic side to me besides music, and it was coming out in my photography. I had a wife tell me, I'd shot some girl nude, and she said, you should be an artist. And I said, are you kidding? And she goes, no. She goes, you just don't take these girls' pictures. You create art. I go, me, an artist? And she goes, yeah, you should try it. So I said, okay. And I got the mindset of an artist, I felt. I started a little stable of models I could use anytime. They didn't cost me anything. They loved adventure. There was plenty of that in what I did. and and so I did a lot of nude art photography, which is unfortunately not a big seller. There's not a huge market for it, but I did sell in galleries and art shows, things like that. And I did fairly well, enough to make me keep doing it. But eventually digital came along and that basically wiped out my entire business completely. And so at that point, you know, I was out of business after 20 years.
Right. Now you do other art too, right? I've seen, I don't know what they are made of, but I've seen things on like your Facebook. What you know what I'm talking about? They're like,
Yeah, I sure do.
what
Yeah,
is
that's what
what
I
is
do
that
now.
material? What is that? Is that metal?
It is metal, yeah,
Okay.
and it comes from a very unusual source. I started doing that because when digital got to the point where whenever you see a picture, you can't believe it's real or not.
Mm-hmm.
I said it's no longer artistic to be a photographer. You just have to be good with a computer.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Right.
And so it wasn't challenging to me. I was a guy that loaded film in his camera. I loved the way film felt in my hands, and I loved developing it. I loved printing it. That was me. And uh, so it just, and there people were making pictures that looked like mine out of people that didn't even exist. So it just, I needed something else. So a lot of times I'd take these naked girls and I'd take them to these old abandoned mine sites that I knew of in the desert because I know the desert quite well here. And I'd do their nudes out there. And so then what happened was I remembered how when I'd be at these sites and they're fixing their makeup or they're doing something or they're taking a pee, I don't know what they're doing. But, I'm walking around and I was always looking at the ground because I'd find interesting looking things. And they were metal and they were rusty. And I loved the color of the rust on the old buildings I was using.
Mm.
So um, I got an idea one day, that put my phone, that if I were to take those things and make pictures with them, that that would be interesting. So to answer your question quite shortly, those materials come from old mines and they're just laying on the ground and anybody else in the world except me would walk right over them. They're
Wow.
trash.
So do you go out there just one day and go collect a bunch of stuff? Yeah. That's
Yes,
cool. That's
often.
very cool. The
Yeah.
stuff is amazing. Do you sell it? Do you have
Oh yeah,
yeah, okay.
it actually sells quite well and not cheap. So I mean, you can't go to Hobby Lobby and buy old mine trash.
Right. That's awesome. Do you have an online store for that stuff? Do you sell it online or just at shows or?
I did. I was having trouble with the website and stuff, and then finally I just said, no, if I
Mhm.
need to sell anything or if I create something new, I just use Facebook. I'm at the
Okay.
max for followers. You know, um, you got to make all these moves to make anybody come to your website
Hmm.
anyway. You got to
Yeah.
sign up
Yeah.
on this site and that site and this site. It's like, now I think I'll just hit up, 5,000 people here.
Right.
And,
Right.
that's good enough for me. And I'll do an art show somewhere
That's
or a
awesome.
gallery.
It's definitely cool stuff. Um,
Yeah.
tell me about what you're doing now because you're doing a Randy Rhoads tribute in Australia, right?
Yeah. This is something I've been doing for a couple of years. Every once in a while, somebody will call me up from usually back east or somewhere, or even Japan. That's happened twice. And say, hey, we'd like to bring you over here and we want you to play some Quiet Riot songs. And I'd say, okay. And I just go over there and I play with whoever the band is or whoever the players are. I don't care. If you know the song, that's right. So that's what we do. And generally I get paid for it. Not that much, you know. Um, but apparently my name means something to a lot of people and I can draw a crowd of like 12 people. So, um, so I've been doing that, and it's been a lot of fun. And now Australia is the pinnacle of all that work. In that, uh, number one, there's going to be a Q&A session with me and Scott Shelly, the guy who taught Randy Rhoads, and third party taught me. So no one's ever done that.
So
And
this
so
is the
that's going to
first time with the
happen
two of you.
the first time I've seen him since I was a little kid. I've talked to him on the phone a few times, and we get along really good. And he's really funny, and the Q&A should be good. There is a third person who happens to live in Australia that we are uh, talking about having. And I can't say his name because I'm not going to commit him when he's not ready to be committed. So, although, well, that's a different thing. But, so yeah, I'll be in Australia. This is an event that's sponsored by X Records, and I'll be doing Melbourne, Brisbane, and Sydney. Sydney's on a boat, so that'll be the funnest one.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Now, is there any plans to do anything here in the States?
I don't really go out and look for it. I wait for somebody to call me up and say, "Hey, will you do this?" I just went to. I got back last week from Indiana, where the previous year they had me come out there and play, and you wouldn't even believe how small this town is. I mean, really, it was like under 100 people. And I stay in a monastery, and it's just being out of the Vegas area and the type of people that live here, and you get around those Midwest kind of types. It's really refreshing, and I enjoy them. And they pay for everything. It's a nice little sort of mini vacation for me, and I make a few bucks. So, but I don't go looking for it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, good. Well, it sounds like you got a lot of stuff going on and you're having fun. You seem great,
I'm healthy.
Yeah.
I went to the doctor today and he said he was jealous.
Yeah. What do you got back there hanging on your wall? Those bases? Are those original bases
That's
from?
Here, I'll give you the tour of the room. Well, as you can see, I'm trying to look here. And by the way, that art piece there is the first one I ever made.
Nice.
When I first got the idea, I said, this is what I think I can do. And I made that. But there's a bunch of cool Quiet Riot pictures.
Right.
Definitely got a few bases in here.
Are any of those bases your originals?
No, I wish.
Yeah.
And then here's another wall.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
With more bases. So yeah, this is basically my music room.
Nice. Hey, you know what I wanted to ask you before we go? Tell me about that. I think it was the Quiet Riot 2 record. What's the deal with you guys in the locker room with the football players?
Well, I'm happy to say.
Well, you weren't in the picture.
Not you guys, it's those guys.
Yeah. Wait,
yeah.
What was that? Do you know?
All I got told was that it was Kevin's idea.
Oh, geez.
I can tell you this. Had I been in the band, that would have been a hard task for me.
I was trying to understand the concept, and I don't get it still.
I don't think there is a concept. I mean, I think it's ridiculous. And, I have to autograph them all the time, and I'm just like, because everybody knows, and Rudy's very open about it, that, I played and he's just pictured. So, my dog's here to say hello. So anyways, yeah, I am, if I got anything good out of Quiet Riot, it was that I didn't end up on the cover of that album.
You got the best part of that. You got to play on the record, but you didn't have to sit in that locker room with
I didn't have to be lifted up by a football player.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly. Well, listen, man, it's been great talking to you. It's been a pleasure. So much good stuff for you. Great memories.
Yeah. Make sure you give me a link to this. I'll definitely put it on my Facebook page. And,
Will do.
Lots of people can see it.